Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl with me, AJ. Today we have a green episode. Why? Well, first of all, we have the new smart fortwo electric. And well, second of all, look at it. It's so green. So are you interested? Let's find out more. Come on, let's go. The design of the new fortwo electric isn't really different than the standard fortwo with the petrol engine, so make sure you watch our reviews of the regular fortwo, the fortwo cabriolet and the Brabus, as well as our coverage of the fortwo electric at the Paris Auto Show. So up front, well, it's iconic. It's the same fortwo that we've seen from the previous generation. It has lightweight composite materials, and below this you can access your windshield wiping fluid and the standard car battery. And then you slide it back in, push these tabs back inside, and you do have the option of locking it with the key so that nobody can steal your precious windshield wiping fluid. The Smart Fortwo, with its small overhangs, a full-length wheelbase and overall square stance, has a turning circle of about 6.95 meters. It also comes with a lot of safety features. Don't think that just because it's small that it's unsafe. It really isn't. It has a lot of airbags, it comes with emergency braking, it has crumple zones in the front as well as on the sides. So in case of a side impact, the battery is designed to move away or even drop so that it doesn't come in contact with the cabin or open metal and then cause electric shocks. In fact, even the high voltage cables that are running from the battery to the engine will be disengaged in case there is an accident. This car is not just small, it's tiny. The length is about 2.69 meters, that's about 8 foot 9 inches. So up front we have 16-inch wheels, these are glossy black. Then over here we have the badging for the prime trim level. We'll talk about that in a bit. And on the side you can see we have what they call the Tridon safety cell. It's nothing fancy, it's just basically a steel shell which adds a lot of structural integrity and rigidity and a lot of safety. And this comes painted in a different color, and in this case it's green. To me it kind of looks like a little bug or a piece of candy. Very cutesy. What do you think? So the car stands at about 1.66 meters wide or 5 foot 5 inches. On the side you see these circular tail lamps. They kind of look like jelly beans or gumdrops. To me the whole car looks very much like a big jelly bean. I think if I was a giant and I saw this, I'd probably pick it up and eat it. But apart from that, in the middle you have the smart badging, and down here you have the electric drive badging. Here is the key. We unlock the door. And wow, this is quite ironic in my opinion. For a car that is so small and is meant to be able to be parked in really tight spaces in the urban environment, the door opens so large and wide. Getting out and in tight spaces is going to be a bit tricky. But apart from that, the plastics up here are pretty okay. As we go further down, you have some fabric, so it's softer. Then a very oval layout on the door with the mirror adjustment over here. And again, compared to the large size of the door, a fairly small cubbyhole for your water bottle. On the inside, because we have the prime trim level, it's all black with white highlights. The dashboard itself is again fabric, but the seats are full leather, animal skin leather, which we here in Autogefühl, we would prefer to have animal-friendly leatherette or fabric. And overall, a very black scheme. The steering wheel itself actually is quite large, unexpectedly large, for me at least, but it has a lot of useful functions which we will take a look at later on. So let's take a seat inside the car. Ingress is really easy because it's so tall and the seating position is upright. The seat can be adjusted for height and reclining and things like that manually, and you also have seat heaters. But unfortunately, the steering wheel column itself has no adjustment whatsoever. But apart from that, the dials are very minimalistic. I'll show you that in a bit. So it's very easy to read, although I have a couple things that I'm not so happy about, and again I will talk about them later. Getting inside the car, you feel like you're inside some kind of a smartphone. Everything is so modern and chic and trendy and looks very technologically advanced. And I think that's part of the appeal of this car. These air vents are also really cool because you can completely turn them around 360 degrees and they give a lot of useful airflow around the cabin. Speaking of the cabin, it's surprisingly large and airy for a car of this size. But then again, it's because of the tall structure of the car. And this car that we have here today also has a panoramic sunroof. Up here, you get the hazard light buttons and the lock, which is a bit odd, but then again, you don't really need to reach for these buttons that often, so it's okay. The materials up here again are fabric, so it's fine. Over here you have a lockable glove box, although it's very small. And again, a lot of useful safe storage areas like this cubby hole down here and places to keep your sunglasses on the top of the doors. There is a shade for the panoramic roof, which you can easily reach up and slide across. So up here we have a nice dial. You can rotate it. It's a bit wiggly, but anyway, it displays the amount of battery power you have in terms of percentage, as well as shows you how much of the battery you are using at any current given time, and when you're braking, how much of charge is being regenerated and put back into the battery. So here on the dashboard, we have the speedometer on the top. It takes a little bit of getting used to read it as a semicircular dial on the outside of the rim. But apart from that, in the middle, we have a small screen which gives you useful information. There's even something called as an eco score, as you can see. It understands your driving habits and helps you improve your efficiency and get the most out of the electric car. It shows you distance to empty in terms of the charge. It shows you your kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers usage of energy. The energy flow in terms of how much battery is there with the auxiliary systems that you're running. The status of the battery itself. Some messages and settings. And your speed. However, it doesn't really give you any indication of your navigation. So you're forced to look at the screen on the right to rely on all your navigation instructions. So, the Smart Fortwo is available in 3 trims: the Passion, the Prime, and the Proxy. The Passion comes with fabric upholstery for the seats and in a dual tone scheme with orange and black. Here we have the Prime, so you get real animal skin leather in black with white stitching, and the Proxy has a blue and white color scheme with artificial leather. Here in the middle of the car you have a small armrest. It does shake a little bit back and forth. And there's a small cup holder behind that as well. And down here we have a SD card reader, a 12-volt power socket, a USB and an auxiliary port. Continuing further up, we have a manual handbrake. Again, it's a bit shaky, all of these things, but I think you can forgive it. It's just trying to be lightweight and affordable. And up here, we have the gear lever. Kind of looks like a tennis ball or a baseball, the stitching for me at least, to shift between the modes. You have an eco mode button here, which helps you get a better range. And two small cup holders. And down here, you have a small cubby hole. Oh, I already talked about that. So here we have the climate control unit. It has a bubble-like magnifying center and a slider to change the temperature, and fan speed controls, the auto climate control button, defoggers, and vent control systems on the side. This does look nice. However, I think the execution is not so good, because from where I'm sitting, the bubble is very hazy, it's kind of shiny so it glares, and the bottom of the numbers are always cut off. So it's always difficult to understand. This could have been executed better, I think, if they still wanted to keep this kind of a system. And again, the old fit and finish still seems a bit tacky. Now let's take a look at the infotainment system. There is a tablet-like 7-inch touchscreen with several buttons on the side. This is for your volume, your home button, and you can even control the volume with this. In the main menu, we have several options for your multimedia, your navigation. The navigation system is a bit slow to respond. It takes some time for it to understand when you have changed your route and to recalculate the route. I think it could have been a little bit better. Then you have a lot of options in terms of your vehicle status for your electric drive. Certain services like TomTom Live. And settings to change your system. This car does get mirror link, and in the future, Smart has told us that Android Auto will also join this system. However, there is no plan at the moment to include Apple CarPlay. This car also gets a rear view camera. As you can see, it has dynamic guidelines, but the graphics seem a bit outdated and the camera quality also is not that good. But for city tight spaces, you know, you can just turn around and look over your shoulder. So overall, the system does its job and it does it pretty well. The Smart fortwo also has a range of connectivity options in terms of social media platforms where you can start your own car sharing circles within your community or your work. And it has an app where you can control the car, basic functions like locking and unlocking the car. They even have a drop-off function. So if you've ordered something from a DHL or some provider like that, you can have the package delivered to your trunk by opening it from your office room remotely and things like that. So it does have a lot of these functions which make it more modern and youthful and trendy, but there are several omissions which I find quite surprising. First of all, talking about the phone, I mean, where do I put my phone? This is a city car. People are going to be jumping in and out all the time, but there is no place for me to put my phone. More than that, there is no USB or charging ports up here. Forget even having a wireless inductive charger. The only way to charge your phone would be to go all the way back here to the USB port here. And then what? Where do I keep my phone then? This is a very common thing, which I don't know how Smart has forgotten that. Another thing, like I mentioned earlier, is this temperature readout on the slider. It does get tricky to read because it gets distorted. It's not really magnifying it. I don't think this bubble system is really helping it at all. And finally, it's the size of the door, which I find a bit puzzling. Again, I know it's inherent in the design and there's not much they can really do about it, but being so wide, when you're parked in a tight city space, which this car is supposed to be good at, it's going to be difficult to open your door completely or even just enough to get out. Now, to open the rear, it's a two-step process. It's kind of like a clamshell. First you open the window, and then you open the tailgate itself. You can move this shelf out of the way, and if you have larger items, you can completely remove it altogether on both sides and fold the front seat down and fit a lot more. But as it stands, this is about 350 liters, so just about enough to keep your daily errands. And up here, in the tailgate, you have another secret compartment. So if you're leaving your car parked in an open lot or something and you want to keep some valuables, you can secure them away here. And this tailgate itself holds up to 100 kilograms, so you could sit on this if you wanted to. And like I mentioned earlier, since the platform hasn't really changed between the petrol car and the electric car, the engine is replaced by the electric motor. So that means it's still housed underneath this, and it's still rear wheel drive. And that also means that the front two wheels can be steered at really steep angles to make the turning radius incredibly tight. So the electric motor is a three-phase synchronous motor which makes 81 horsepower and 160 newton meters of torque. And remember, it's an electric motor, so the torque is available from 0 RPM from the get-go. Driven judiciously, you can achieve a range of about 160 kilometers. Driven swiftly, you can go about 130 kilometers per hour in terms of speed. The fortwo electric gets a 17.6 kilowatt hour battery, which is stowed away underneath here, below the front two seats. This battery is pretty much the same as the one that was there on the previous generation. It has just been improved in terms of efficiency, and that's because Smart wanted to keep this car lightweight and affordable. And again, it's just a city runabout. They're not trying to make it like a Tesla, which would let you drive across cities or across states. So that's why it's essentially the same and helps retain the comparatively low cost of this car. So this is where you charge your car. So with the standard 230 volt 12 amp power socket, it takes about 6 hours to reach 80%. But if you equip the car with the 22 kilowatt supercharger and use a 32 amp power, then it takes only 45 minutes to reach 80%. So here we are driving the Smart fortwo electric. First off, we're starting off on the highway just to get a taste of how it is out on the open road. And I must really be honest here, as soon as I got in and started driving, it did not seem like a small car to me. The steering wheel is actually a lot larger than I expected it to be, and it gives the feeling that you're driving a bigger car. And also, there's a lot of width inside the cabin as well, which also makes the car seem really spacious. It's only when you look in the rear view mirror and then you realize that the rear windshield is right behind you that you realize that this car is so small. Also, the suspension is really well tuned. So on the highway, even though this has a really short wheelbase, it doesn't, buffet around. It's really stable, really smooth. Again, the width also aids in making it a very stable car out on the highway. And most importantly, it's so quiet. There's no motor that you hear constantly. There's really good insulation, so there's a very little tire noise and wind noise that filters into the cabin. Because it's really tall, there's really good visibility everywhere, all around. Again, the rear view window, the rear window is right behind you, so you really have a great overview. There's really useful gauges as well. You get a gauge here which shows you how much electric power you're actually using real time and how much is left. So you can kind of test yourself and see how economical you can be. And there's obviously regenerative braking. So when you let go of the I can't really say the throttle, I'm just going to call it the throttle for sake of simplicity. When you let go of the throttle, it does start charging a little bit again. But you have a lot of other useful information on the dash over here. Like, for example, it gives you something called your eco score. So it sees how you're driving, how you're anticipating, and how much of braking you're using. So how economical you're driving, and it gives you a score. So you can test yourself and get better and better with this car. Apart from that, well, the air conditioning vents are also positioned really well. It gives me plenty of wind flow to my face rather than just blowing into my hands, so that's good. We're just gonna get off this exit ramp here. Now around the corner you do feel it's short wheelbase, you do feel that it's really tall, and it's kind of, you have to get a little bit used to it, because I'm feeling a bit scared now taking this corner at, you know, whatever, at 45 or 50 right now, which would be totally fine in a regular hatchback, but here I'm a bit apprehensive because, you know, I just have to get used to it. This car can totally handle that, there's no problem at all. But apart from that, it's so much fun to drive an electric car. You have instant response from the electric motor. There's power instantly. There's torque from 0 RPM essentially. That's what it's known for. So again, it's a lot of fun. Now we're here in the city, the natural habitat for the smart. It's kind of like a little mouse in the urban jungle, and this town we're here in, Toulouse in France, is a perfect urban jungle. And electric cars, electric motor, you have so much power from the get-go. It's fantastic. In fact, I do remember some time ago when the original Smart Electric was out, they had a commercial which was really interesting, where they drag raced the smart car against the industry standard sports cars like Audis and Ferraris and Porsches. And in the end they said in the city the first 10 meters or whatever, 10 feet is what counts, and then they showed that the smart car was always beating these big fancy sports cars within the first 10 meters. And that's totally true, because here in the city that's what matters. It's not outright performance, it's not top speed, it's just being able to navigate within tight corners and jumping in between these gaps, and that's where the Smart shines. Another thing which is really fun about this car is because you're sitting so far back, you're pretty much on the rear axle, and the front wheels are also so close up ahead. It's like driving, you know, those bumper cars in those amusement parks, you know, because this turning radius is so tight as well. It's fantastic. Oh, see, exactly, in these narrow city streets here in Toulouse, it's really perfect. The steering wheel also is really progressive. So when you're steering really quickly, it's very responsive. It has really good weight. It's light around in the city, but on the highway it's a little bit heavier, so you have much more stability. Has a really nice grip to it as well. Again, it's larger than I really expected it to be. And inside, from, you know, this kind of a view, it feels like a really spacious car. And it is, for one person or even two people. There's plenty of room in here. You're not on top of each other. On the city bumpy streets, it does kind of bounce around a little bit. Again, I don't think it's too bad. But because of the short wheelbase, the undulations are felt a lot more prominently than perhaps in a car which is longer. And another thing which takes some getting used to is because it's an electric motor, you know, my brain is hardwired to anticipate the sound of the engine, and it's expected, it's something I use to calculate my speed, you know, and when I don't have the sound as a reference point, I kind of end up noticing that I'm kind of going a little bit faster than I should be. But then again, it's just a matter of getting used to it. But yes, for a daily commute to your office or to your school or to get groceries, if you're single or this is a second car, fantastic. And it's green. Perhaps not in this trim level because we do have leather, and we would prefer the other trims which have either artificial leather or cloth. But you know, even though 150, 160 kilometers of range is not too much, for a city drive, I think it's okay. I mean, here in Europe at least, the cities are quite small, and as long as you don't have to go to another neighboring town for your office or for your school, I think 150, 160 is okay for a day's drive. And if you plan to go on longer distances, you know, this probably would not be the ideal car for that, certainly. But it's really quiet, it's relaxing. I'm starting to like this car. I'm starting to like the concept of electric cars. Another interesting feature with the Smart fortwo is it mimics a gasoline or diesel engine by having the creep function. So like right now we're in traffic, I let go of the brake and it starts creeping like it would in a regular automatic car. So it's really easy to get used to. You don't have to keep shifting between the brake and the accelerator pedal. You just let go of the brake and the car starts creeping like you would expect it to. The Smart fortwo Electric starts at 22,000 euros here in Germany, including VAT. It'll be available from spring of this year, and in the US it'll be available from the summer. But it's important to note that this car will only be sold as an electric car going forward in the US and Norway. You will no longer get the petrol engines in these two countries. I think this car is a good step in the right direction, with a lot of countries now banning polluting cars in their city centers and charging a lot of tax for high polluting vehicles. And on the other hand, giving concessions to electric cars. I think electric cars are definitely the way of the future. This car is really fun and is a very useful car to have in the city. It does have its quirks, however, like I mentioned in the interior, with things like charging your phone, connecting your phone, and some build quality issues. But I think overall, for this price point, it is a good option. So let us know what you think and put your comments in the section below.